Hi everybody, I decided to do another video about the situation in Hong Kong, about the umbrella movement and the student protests in Hong Kong. But this video of mine is going to be a little different from my previous videos. I kind of want to sum the whole situation up. I kind of want to recap. I'm gonna tell you those things that they don't tell you in the news. I want to tell you the things that are going on behind the scenes, basically. So let's start at the beginning chronologically. Let's start in 1989 because, believe it or not, that's where it all started, basically. Because if there would have been no Tiananmen Massacre, no massacre of the students in Tiananmen Square in 1989, there would be no umbrella movement today. And you might not believe that. I think that there is no connection other than that they appear similar. That's not what I mean. I don't mean the similarities between them. It really is like if there would have been no massacre in 1989, there would be no umbrella movement today. Why? It has to do with the things behind the scenes. Because what really started in 1989, or from the Communist Party's point of view, is factions. You know, before 1989, from the Communist Party's point of view, it was mainly important to belong to the Communist Party. If you wanted to survive, you had to be a Communist Party member, or at least a Communist Party supporter. This is especially true during the Cultural Revolution. You had to be a Communist Party supporter, right? Anybody who wasn't was killed, and it's still like that. That's basically the whole logic of the Communist Party, summed up right there. There are those people who support the Communist Party, and there are those people who are against the Communist Party. Eventually, they will kill the people who are against the Communist Party. Of course, they won't do it just like that. The way they operate is that they first slander them, and then they will kill them. Anyway, in the past, you were relatively safe, from being killed, as long as you said that you supported the Communist Party. But what happened in 1989, from the Communist Party's perspective, is that it became more and more important which faction you belong to. Now, those factions within the Communist Party, they're not official factions. It's like you have to see it as kind of like, like in the mafia. It's it's like mafia bosses competing with each other. It's kind of like that, and it's all unofficial. But that's really what it is all about. And what happened after the Tiananmen Square Massacre is that those factions within the Communist Party that supported the students and supported democracy, well, those factions basically lost. And those people were basically imprisoned. And the other faction that suppressed the students, and the faction that ordered the tanks, to kill the students, that was the winning faction. And they came out on top. And that's actually how you gain power in a Communist Party, how you move to the top. Basically by suppressing others. And that's how Chiang Kai-shek, the former Communist Party chairman, gained power. He gained power because he supported the Tiananmen Square Massacre. He supported the killing of the peaceful students with tanks. And he was a very important figure back then, and basically made it possible that those students got killed. And that's how he rose to power. Why I'm telling you this is because now, after that he gained power, he controls the most important unofficial faction within the Communist Party. Basically, there are two factions right now in the Communist Party. They're fighting with each other. There's one faction that is loyal to Jiang Zemin. Jiang Zemin is no longer the head of the Communist Party, the official head of the Communist Party, but he still, is a very important figure, and he pulls all the strings pretty much. And so this is one faction, is the faction loyal to Jiang Zemin, and the other faction is the faction loyal to Xi Jinping, okay, who is the current Communist Party chairman. So now recently what happened is that the Xi Jinping faction was beginning to get on top. And not only that, but they actively kind of eradicated the Jiang Zemin faction. Mainly all the people who belong to the Jiang Zemin faction, the higher-ups, they were all arrested. And they were all arrested basically by the Xi Jinping faction. It's all about internal power struggles there. Basically, right now, it's only Jiang Zemin and one or two really loyal people one or two people that are still loyal to him who are left. And they were afraid, they were afraid for their lives. They were afraid of getting imprisoned. And of course, they've all committed serious crimes, and they're afraid that they would have to pay for them. So they think that by coming out on top in that power struggle, that's going on within the Communist Party, they can prevent themselves from getting arrested and for paying for the various crimes they have committed. So they want to win the power struggle and eradicate basically the Xi Jinping faction. How are they going to do that? They have a plan. They do the only thing that they know how to do, and that is gain power by suppressing people. And they thought like, oh yeah, look, yeah, the Tiananmen Square Massacre in 1989 worked out pretty well. It helped us gain power. Pity that there isn't another massacre. Then maybe we could gain power again, come out on top in the power struggle, and eradicate the competing factions within the Communist Party so that we're in control again. The only problem is, well, there would have to be a Tiananmen Square Massacre, right? But there isn't one, so they would have to create one, right? And that's exactly what they tried to do. They intentionally stirred up trouble in Hong Kong, by saying, they're not stupid, They know that, what the Communist Party did is basically first saying, okay, Hong Kong can have free elections by 2017. They said that. And now they go and say, oh, okay, we were just kidding. We were just saying bullshit. You cannot have free elections by 2017. We lied. You will never have free elections, in fact. Basically that's what they said, in a nutshell. So, of course, the people in Hong Kong were not happy about that. And of course, the Communist Party knew that they were not going to be happy if they're going to say that, right? It was intentional. They wanted there to be a protest in Hong Kong. Why? Because, as I just told you, they want to basically repeat the Tiananmen Square Massacre. But of course that hasn't happened, luckily, yet. Why? Because, well, the students in Hong Kong are totally peaceful. And if they go in with tanks and kill them all, when they're totally peaceful, well, that doesn't look so good for the Communist Party because, in Hong Kong, it's not like in mainland China, because in Hong Kong, there is still a decree of freedom of press, and there are all kinds of reporters in Hong Kong. So if they just go in there with tanks and kill innocent, peaceful students, it's not going to look too good for the Communist Party, so they can't do it that way. So they were hoping that the protests would turn violent. I mean, the Communist Party was hoping that the protests in Hong Kong would turn violent, so that then they could use violence, well, to basically kill all the protesters, and thereby gain power. That's how their internal that's how they gain power internally within the Communist Party. So they were hoping that would happen. But unfortunately for the Communist Party, the students in Hong Kong have remained totally peaceful, so they cannot send in tanks and just kill them. It would look, terrible for the Communist Party internationally. So they have been trying the whole time. They have done their best, using all kinds of evil schemes and tactics to try and turn the protest violent. And even if the students in Hong Kong have remained totally peaceful, but even then they have all kinds of tactics. They're sending in agent provocateurs. I don't really know how to pronounce it, but you know what I mean. Those guys, basically agents, posing as students and trying to stir up trouble, or other people trying to provoke the students, trying to pick up fights, all kinds of tactics like that. To paint the protests in Hong Kong in a violent picture, and to get the students to provoke a violent reaction, so that they then can send in tanks or send in the army or whatever. That's what they're trying to do. And that's why they're using all kinds of tactics. They're paying people to stir up trouble. They're paying the mafia in Hong Kong to stir up trouble. And recently, you've seen, and especially the newspapers and the propaganda in communist China, they're all reporting, the students would be violent and stuff. All those people are not students. They're people who get paid to do that. It's usually, the mafia in Hong Kong. The mafia people in Hong Kong, they get paid by the Communist Party to stir up trouble. And then they can frame the students. And then they can send in tanks. So if anybody from Hong Kong hears this, it's very important that you remain peaceful. Your life depends on it.